to our live panel show where I play.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first edition of the Post-Partisan Podcast. Newsbustin with Dustin and Justin.
Yeah.
That's not just a clever rhyme. That's
us. We're real. We're real. We're raw.
As you can tell by our funk intro.
Yeah.
So I like we've done shows together before, but just to like give a little background, I always thought like both of us kind of came from different sides of the political debate. We used to always argue on Facebook all the time. And then as time progressed, I started going, holy shit, Justin was right about this stuff. I got a little red pilled, as they say.
Yeah. And I mean, it's nobody's fault. You know, we kind of can fall into a bubble either side. I just try and look at stuff with the most logic that I can put to it. You know, if something just doesn't sound right, a lot of the times you just got to wait.
Whoa. You there? Your sound cut out. So go into, yeah. It looks like you're on mute, or did you just mute?
Okay, now can you hear me?
There you go. Yeah. That was weird.
I'm getting a recording error on my side for some reason.
Oh, let me turn that off. I was doing the oh, it says Justin has low storage space. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when we go on, it does an option to do local recordings. So I chose that, but I guess it's like not able to do it on your side. So that's probably what happened.
All right, what do you think I should do here then?
Oh, don't worry about it. It's basically an option so that like after the show's over, we have a file of your sound and your video. So if there's like errors on the stream, I can cut it together without like any problems.
Gotcha.
You know,
all right,
so it's kind of like a backup thing, but I wonder if there's a way to turn it off.
Yeah, I don't know. That was weird. Because like I can't really even hear anything now in my headphones.
Can you hear my voice?
I can hear you, but it's a lot quieter than it was.
Good God, man.
Technical difficulties, everyone.
Yeah, I should have. Oh, here we go. I think I can turn it off. Recording settings are disabled while live.
So we won't have a recording then.
Yeah, we
would. I wonder if I gotta.
Maybe there's a way.
Do I need to go in maybe to my computer and open up some space?
No, like don't worry about it. We'll just go, and if there's a problem, hopefully it'll just shut off. But it shouldn't affect too much. So anyway, continue with what you were saying. Basically, we did this as kind of a. I mean, my mentality the last couple of months has been parties don't matter. It's all tribal bullshit. And
yeah,
the Democrats have proven they're every bit as cultish as the MAGA people they used to make fun of.
well, and here's the thing I see with that, like even, what was it, yesterday, what I don't know who's running the show really, it's not Biden, but like all the
Definitely not.
LGBTQ stuff they're pushing right now, so the White House comes out and says, "Oh, Easter Sunday is now the LGBTQ plus whatever they are day of visibility." And I think all that is to try and piss the conservatives and Christians off enough. There's somebody that's calling the shots that's just trying to pit everybody against each other.
I don't
And
disagree.
I almost think that that's what that is. Because, I mean, you start seeing the comments on Instagram and stuff, and it's doing what they were trying to do with it.
Did they really say that? Like, where did they say that?
So, here, I can probably send you a deal here. Yeah, it's all over on Instagram right now, at least in my feed. Let's see. Here, I'll send it to you. I'm pretty sure I saved it here. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And it's like, well, I kind of get it because how many people in his administration are either trans or something, of that persuasion.
Well, I think I don't have any problem with that as long as it's not like informing your job to the point where it's like that's all you care about, right? Like if it's fine if you're trans, be in the military, be in the administration, whatever, but don't be like they would have the same problem if someone was like hype Christian conservative doing that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Once you're in the job.
And that's the thing. I don't really care either. If that's what you're into, go ahead. If it's going to start affecting your job or that's the only reason you got your job, then it don't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, if you find that, we can visit. I want to start playing this video though, because I want you to see.
I sent it to you. We can come back to it.
Okay, yeah, we definitely can. Anyway, let's watch this.
So
we can pause
it. Our live panel show where I play videos. Everybody's funny.
I want
Rob
you to
Schneider
see
was on that panel.
I thought it was really good.
Sam Tripoli, Steph, and Kurt. And we had a guy in the front row who was wearing a MAGA hat, right? And at one point he had an outburst where he was we were criticizing Trump. We were saying the problem with Trump was he listened to all the wrong people in his first term, which he did.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so this guy got mad. He started yelling, saying he's the only one who can get us out of this. He's the only one who has a plan. He understands it now and stuff like this. And so we calmed him down. And I made the point, well, he did listen to the wrong people because RFK Jr. talked him into having a panel on vaccine safety in Congress. And then Bill Gates says, no, that would be a bad thing. That's a direct quote.
I didn't know that, but that is true.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that either.
Literally, dude, I literally just got a text from Gavin Newsom.
What?
The Democrat, like the Bernie campaign sold their list to the Democrats. And
the Republicans did that too. And I'm a registered independent, so I can't like vote in any of the caucus and all that stuff either.
Bernie sold his mailing list. Okay, let's take a quick pause here. Oh, Gavin Newsom here. I know your inbox and phone are flooded, but give me a chance to explain. This request is so important. Alyssa Slotkin, know her? She's the Democrat. So they're fundraising.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Constantly.
This is more important.
And so he didn't. He listened to Bill Gates. So that would actually be a great thing because what would we learn? We'd learn that vaccines are safe and effective. Right? What are you afraid to find out?
It's only going to help.
It would only help. It would only make people more believe in vaccines. So anyway, after that, then we had a guy who's a legit Marxist. He got angry because Sam Tripoli said something about the Bolshevik Revolution, and Rob Schneider said something about nobody swimming to Cuba. So I'm going to show you that right now.
Are you trying to discourage me from doing a live show?
So
because I already put down the money.
No, this to me, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened in my career.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So let's watch this.
Yeah, and it just gets into the theory of something is worse than what's actually happening on the streets. The thought of what Trump could do is 10 times worse than crime everywhere, fentanyl everywhere, jobs lost, immigration is just insanity. I mean, we're all the descendants of some immigrant at some time. Okay, there's nothing wrong with come to America, but when you're flooding it, it's a Bolshevik revolution. And for Bill Maher,
so now I had a Marxist who screamed, "There's nothing wrong with a Bolshevik revolution." So did you hear him? So now he's going to start screaming, and here we go.
Oh, this is the best.
Not for the green man on
you
St.
are
Patrick's. Don't do this.
Let's just say
never go fully retarded, sir. Please.
Yeah.
Great.
No one is
Larry
swimming.
David's upset. Oh God.
No one is swimming the.
I'm sorry. The Bolshevik Revolution was great. You're right.
Hey,
right.
no
It
one
was
is
great. Oh, okay. So the guy that was in charge.
So then the Marxist guy yelled, "Yeah, the Bolshevik revolution got Stalinized." So he's saying the Bolshevik revolution would have been good if it wasn't for Stalin. I think that's what he's saying. Now, I'm not smart enough to know anything about this, so let's just keep it going.
For the record, I tried to cut this up, but there's so much good stuff. It takes a little bit to like really get going, but there's like so many good like conversation points in this.
I do read it all the time. Okay.
I have no one is swimming the 80 miles from Miami to get to fucking Havana, because of the not the Cuban, but communism doesn't fucking work. Communism doesn't work. I'll tell you.
So that guy's screaming, "How stupid are you?" He's like, the Marxist is screaming at us, "How stupid are you?" Right?
There's like a comment section come to life.
This is like a comment section come to life. Watch this. It keeps going.
Hold on. I want this guy to fight this guy. Let's go.
So Sam Tripoli says, "I want this guy." There's a MAGA guy to fight that guy. So we had
seen the
so
MAGA
to
guy
me,
yet.
to me, I'm very proud that look who the people who bought a ticket. I have a Marxist guy who's a pro-Bolshevik, bought a ticket to my show. Bought a ticket, didn't watch it on you, but actually bought a ticket. And a MAGA guy also bought a ticket to my show. That tells me I'm doing something right, because the message of this show is that it isn't left right anymore. It's us against them. It's top and down. It's not left or right. It's all over, because the people who are considered lefties are complete what they used to consider right wing, which is authoritarian, pro-war, pro-censorship, anti-freedom, anti-choice.
Right.
Those are all things we used to consider right wing, and now all those right wingers are anti-war, pro-choice, anti-censorship. It's crazy how things flip. So it's not a left-right thing anymore. It's us against them. It's not left-right. It's right against wrong.
What do you think about that?
You start to see it's not really mainstreamed though. So you kind of find it in these fringe little areas. So it's nothing you're going to find. They're not going to tell you this stuff on, like MSNBC and stuff. They speak it, but they don't tell you. Any of your big 6 mainstream media companies, they're essentially just mouthpieces for the government anymore. Absolutely. The parties are all the same, like we've said before, they're uniparties because they're all voting for the same stuff. And the trick is if they know one side or the other has enough votes, you'll get a few that'll flip the other way. So it seems like, I voted against this. It's like you knew there was enough votes for it to pass. You're just trying to save face. Oh, because you're up for an election this year and you're up for an election this year. So you said, no, I'm voting against it because you already knew there was enough votes to get it to pass.
Yeah. It's like a fake show of principle, basically. Like, oh, I voted against this, even though they knew. Like AOC, I think, does that all the time, or they vote present or something.
Yeah, I mean, and both parties do it. People from both sides do the same stupid stuff.
But the crux of what he's saying, I like too, is that it's no longer like left and right. I don't think are relevant terms anymore, because people like Matt Gaetz, for example, who's labeled far right, is like one of the best people in Congress right now for actually trying to force change. Like them usurping the speaker at the beginning of the year was like, I was like, bravo, make these people feel threatened,
Well, and that's the thing, and you start to see the machine coming down on them now, like him,
Absolutely.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, all them people. The machine just opened up, and from both sides of the parties, they're like, these people are, I love the famous line, these people are a threat to democracy. Like, oh, please.
I have that video. We're going to talk about that for sure, because that's something that is just mind-boggling. But let's watch a little bit more of this, because there's some really good conversation points in this.
And so that's what makes me very proud that those two people find something in my show enough to buy a ticket to come see it.
This is what I love about Jimmy Dore. Like he was one of the people, especially during COVID, who took a lot of flack from liberals for being honest. And that was the point when he was like, look, I'm not going to hate my neighbor because of Trump or because of vaccine, the virus or whatever. Like, this is clearly like a thing that's designed to like pit us against each other. And his whole thing has been about like, we need to like come together on class lines, like as working people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I firmly believe that somewhere enough people with the same kind of thought process are coming up with these things, because they know if you're divided, you're not looking at them. If you're fighting against each other, you're not paying attention to what they're doing. And then they just, they pull the wool over your eyes. And I mean, you see it on both sides. The really extreme MAGA people, they can't see any other way. It's like anything the other side says is totally, I can't agree with that because of I'm on this side.
Yeah.
And the left does it, and they seem to get the most because of media. They seem to get the most, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, they're squeaking the loudest, so they get all the airtime and all that stuff, and no real opposing views.
Yeah, no, I mean, I used to argue that I think that's changed a lot in the last couple of years, where it wasn't always that way. Like during the Iraq era, the media was very right wing, but it has definitely changed because, like Jimmy was saying, it's like all the neocon people are like the Democrats are all the right now. They're all pro-war, pro-censorship. But with like flowery language for gay people and, abortion rights.
They don't want to offend the wrong people.
Yeah, but it's all a facade though. Have you seen that? Have you seen that meme that has the two planes dropping bombs and it says Republicans and it's just a plane dropping bombs, and it says Democrats and it's a plane dropping bombs with like a Black Lives Matter flag and a rainbow on it and stuff?
That's the same stuff.
Right.
War is profitable, not for us, but for whoever's making the money off it. That's why you got to see all these perpetual wars, and just they're trying to stir up stuff. I mean, like this whole Russia-Ukraine problem.
Oh man,
if they can push a war and we can keep dumping money in there, and the American people have no accountability of where that money went.
I got into a huge argument with my brother Dylan about that yesterday. Because he was telling me about some podcast, and I was like, yeah, I'll listen to it. Because he's like, oh, you should see. It's like Ukraine is like has this like elite submarine thing, and they've completely destroyed Russia's like navy and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'm a little skeptical of that. Like there's a lot of propaganda about Ukraine, and he's like, he like lost it, and I'm like, bro, because I was like, the U.S. instigated that war, right? And he's like, no, they didn't. He's like, you're stupid if you think that. And I'm like, bro, it's in Congress. They literally, I sent him a link from house.gov from Ro Khanna trying to stop funding Nazis in the Ukraine from 2014. I think it's 2018 actually. And it's on house.gov. On the congressional record.
Yeah. So you can find what's really going on, but how many people do you know that will take the time beyond a headline on Facebook or Instagram or someplace, and that's the truth, that's the facts? You're full of crap, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, do some digging. You start finding a lot of things that I even sometimes have thought, no way this is happening. And then they start finding things, you're like, oh crap, well, that changes my perspective on that.
Oh yeah, I used to laugh about my conservative friends being like, oh, there's a secret pedophile ring, and they're like, oh, Epstein, shit, Puff Daddy, like P. Diddy, whatever. Like, oh no.
Well, and just keep going.
Not to just watch a video, but to actually be invested and come out. And so now watch what happens.
Cage fight. Mega versus retard.
Hold on, this guy's all tuckered out. This guy just got going to
the revolution. I can stand up too. I have a microphone.
Wait. So the Marxist Bolshevik guy is standing and he won't sit down, or he's screaming and he's not stopping. And that's why Rob says, and here's the MAGA guy. He has a St. Patrick's Day MAGA hat, which is gorgeous. Here we go. Hey, wait.
Einstein's cousin is upset.
Hold on. I have to get control of the show.
The revolution, your revolution didn't work because capitalism improved the lives of workers and their families.
Trying to sleep, please.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Capitalism did work.
For a second, I agree. No, if they thought that Cuba wouldn't work, why do they have to put sanctions on it? Why don't they let it just fall apart on its own?
Yeah, I know.
The reason is that they're afraid it will work, and that's why they have to fuck with. So I'm with you on Cuba.
Oh no!
So,
Hey, listen.
but the Bolshevik thing, I don't know anything about, so I can't help you.
Do you know Cuba can't even afford homeless people
You don't
all
have
over
to
the
go.
street?
I respect that about Jimmy too. He's like, I don't know anything about that, so I'm not gonna like pretend like I can comment on it.
Yeah.
Very few people will do that.
So Kurt makes the joke. You know, Cuba people can't even afford homeless people because I guess he went to Cuba and he expected to see homeless people, and you don't see them there because everybody has health care, everybody has education, but we sanction the hell out of those people economically.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
So that guy got up. So there's the Bolshevik guy, the Marxist, and he gets up and I go, I don't know anything about it. He comes over, hands me 2 books. You just walk around with Marxist books. That's how you know he's a real Marxist. So he hands me 2 books on Marxism, and he gives it to me. He goes, "Hey, you can read this." I thought he was coming over to hit me, but he came over and he handed me a couple of books. Here we go. Thank you, brother.
See, I helped you.
I think we all saw that coming.
I love that the doc.
I think we all knew a self-written book was at the end.
I agree that the whole blockade of Cuba is stupid. I agree with that.
Good on Rob Schneider too.
Well,
I agree that
it's more U.S. intervention in stuff that we don't need to be sticking our noses in. It costs us, the American taxpayers, for them to do this crap. So one thing I've got to disagree with what he said on there's not that many homeless people there. It depends on where you go. It's just like Mexico. You can go to the good parts of Mexico, and that's what your reality of Mexico is. You get out of those areas, and you start seeing what the reality of Mexico is. So
Right, but look around the United States, man. Like I like, you know, LA is obviously way worse than a lot of places because it's warm here, so and there's way more people than most places. So there's a lot of homeless people, but it's bad everywhere. It's bad in Austin. Utah actually is one of the states that does really well with homeless people.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean,
well, they had a program. They have a program to like get the ones that aren't mentally ill into jobs and homes that like actually helps people in a good way, and it like keeps them honest, you know.
Well, yeah, and that's what we should be doing, you know. It's like some of those people, they don't want to be homeless. Some do, but a lot of them don't want to be. Whatever circumstances they ended up in, they ended up on the road or the streets and stuff, and we don't invest any money on, you know, like welfare in general is supposed to help people that need help.
Yeah.
But there's no accountability within the government to kick people off of it that are abusing the system.
Well,
so then you start souring everybody.
I think that so this is the one of the reasons I like having these conversations, because I think a lot of that stuff too gets demonized, where it's like we were talking about earlier, they want us to fight with each other. Like welfare people are the problem when we have this going on. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's no reason the United States should be, well, what, $35 trillion now in debt after this last stupid bill they passed.
No.
And that was just the uniparty not taking any time to vote or, you know, read it, debate anything. Just, oh, here's a bill. We're going to give it some name that makes everybody feel good and fuzzy about it. And then we pass it. And then down the road, you start finding out what was really in it. And you're like, damn, we just got screwed again.
Well, and that's why I respect them holding out on the Ukraine stuff and everything. It's like it shows, even though Trump's not in power, like he does have some sway with like the bully pulpit from the media. It's weird too. There's this weird dynamic with the Republicans, because it's clear that the mainstream Republican Party hates Trump just like the Democrats do,
because he's disrupting their little club.
Well, here's the other thing too that people don't think about, and I've heard this mentioned before, so I'm not going to take credit for thinking about it, but the Democratic primary is literally rigged for donors with super delegates. The Republican primary does not have that. So someone like Trump was able to cut through the power structure where someone like Bernie Sanders gets seated right away. They're like, no, we're not giving the voters what they want over here. Sorry, buddy. We got donors to take care of.
Well, I think George Carlin said it the best in one of his stand-up. He's like, it's an elite club and you're not in it.
Yep. Let's keep watching this because he talked about George Carlin.
Listen, dude.
But the
I'm a
workers,
Menshevik, and I say fuck the Bolsheviks.
hey, the revolution didn't work.
Listen,
The revolution,
Honestly,
communism
man,
doesn't improve the life of people.
all of it, none of it, capitalism or
For the life of the
communism works
Chinese.
because the people at the top don't want either of them to work.
So
That is such a great point. Like capitalism, it has all the failings now that we talked about with communism. And it's not because capitalism is bad. It's because of what he said. It's the people at the top have rigged it. So it's not even really capitalism anymore.
Yeah. I mean, capitalism used to be when you didn't have big corporations and big money donors electing people. I mean, you still had some of that, but it was the same thing that goes on now. It's like, here, I'm going to give you some money so you can campaign and hopefully win, but then scratch my back, if you do get into office. It's the
It's
same
only
thing.
gotten
It's
it's
just
only
gotten
gotten
bigger
worse.
because dollar numbers have gotten bigger with these corporations and stuff.
well, and the Citizens United thing too made money speech. Like that's the dumbest concept I've ever heard because that means that people with no money can't speak
Yeah.
and people with tons of money have all the speech.
Here, I'm going to send you another one that kind of goes along with this capitalism thing here, because you have idiots like this guy that are out openly protesting against capitalism. And they've got their capitalist phones and their capitalist.
You have to watch the rest of this because this Marxist guy, and I'm not a Marxist or anything.
Right.
I'm definitely to the left of a lot of ways, but I'm in no way a Marxist. But this guy, he gives Jimmy, and Jimmy talks about it. Like we'll just watch it, but he talks about immigration, the paper that the Marxist, and you'll love it. Like I actually it blew me away.
he's making the point that Russ and I was making in the last segment, that it's funny how capitalism and communism kind of end up in the same place if you let them go long enough, and capitalism ends up eating itself, and instead of having competition, it becomes one big company, which is what we have now in communications and media, and we have there's only two companies that make airplanes. There's so this, you have this idea, you have this illusion of choice, is what George Carlin used to talk about. And so we're in end stage capitalism, where it takes over the regulatory agencies, and now you can't trust anything. And everything's falling apart, from planes to bridges to the shipping to anyway. So Sam is kind of making that point right there. And
capitalism started right now here because they built up the country. But at the end, the people at the top wanted to look what they did to Germany. Look what they did to Russia.
All right, you know what? I want to step in.
No one's reading that shit.
Hold on. I want to step in right now.
Wait,
stop. I want to say thank you to the Bolshevik guy for giving a gift. We didn't get a gift from you, MAGA guy.
What the hell's your book?
The gift he gives.
so then the MAGA guy gets up and gives me his hat.
The gift he gives from communism is enslavement for the entire planet. Thank you for that gift. Thank you so much. 100 million Chinese dead. Thank you.
Now let's get back to. All right. I agree with you now. So Rob Snyder, that guy, Rob was driving that guy crazy. So as soon as I get him calmed down, Rob would stick him again, like he just did, and that guy would start up again. And so now the guy gets out of his seat.
I know the type.
And he's going to go over to the MAGA guy, and I think they're going to. I think they're going to fight. Here, watch out.
I agree
Jimmy agrees with you. Have a seat. Moving on.
I will beat him up later.
Don't you have to beat up with Marty McFly? Sit down, Back to the Future.
Oh, he kind of does look a little bit like that.
The people.
All right. This seems.
So now he starts screaming. The MAGA guy starts screaming about the Federal Reserve. And he's got a point about the Federal Reserve. The more I learn about the Federal Reserve, the more I realize how fucked up it is. It's it's private. It's not government. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I didn't.
That's
I
messed
do
up.
now. But
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I knew that from a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I knew that from a long time ago. And I'm like, well, how does that make any sense if the Federal Reserve is private, but an incoming president can appoint the chair, the head guy of it? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No.
That entanglement is, that's messed up.
That's why we can just print money out of thin air.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, but the problem is certain countries are starting to catch on to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, gold doesn't really mean a whole lot to me either. I mean, it's a bartering tool, I guess, if physical money collapses. But other than that, I mean, you can't eat it. It's not going to sustain you. I mean, if somebody else thinks it's pretty and wants to trade you a bundle of apples for a little bit of it, then it's worth something. But other than that, it's a metal.
That's a good point.
We use it in our electronics and stuff. But a lot of people, I mean, I hate to say it, but if China has their way and the reports are correct, because they're constantly trying to hack our grid or into our government's, whatever, meddling into.
If they wanted to, I like all the chips that we use are manufactured there. There's they could take
they're
us
in
out.
Taiwan, yeah. So I mean,
yeah,
that's still a threat as well. But can you imagine the chaos that would happen in this country if our power grid went down?
Oh yeah,
because they've been talking about that for probably a decade, and nothing has changed. Nobody's gone in and tried to separate how the grid works or make it so if it gets hacked, it just kills the whole thing.
Not even get hacked. Here in California, the grid is so outdated it starts fires.
Yeah, but who makes the money though? Does the company make money, or is it the CEOs running off with it and they're not putting anything back into the company?
Exactly. They spend a bunch of money on lobbying, but they never spend money on like upgrading
upgrading the system, because they don't care. They're making, as long as they're making the money, they don't care. And there's no, I mean, what do they get fined for some of them fires? Like $1 billion or something like that. And there's like, all right, we're gonna kick and scream and cry about it, but we're gonna pay it, and then we're gonna business as usual.
Oh man, this is how disgustingly out of date the grid is. SoCal Edison was doing this thing for a while. They're like, hey, there's a lot of wind, so we're going to shut the power off for a little while. I'm like, what is this? Like hey, if your car doesn't start, just kick it. What?
Whip it.
Yeah. Anyway, this is kind of a long clip, but I wanted to show, like, because it's like halfway finished, but
watch this.
I know. These are your fucking fans.
I did this. My apologies.
I hope you're happy, Sam.
Fuck the satanic pedophile.
Okay. Oh, you're making me look bad.
I'm with you on that.
I am so
Isaac Cappy.
Okay, let's get back.
I am so glad I don't have my own podcast.
All right, let's get back to something we can all agree upon.
Why isn't this room hotter? I want a hotter room and more out of that guy and this guy. It was totally worth it.
By the way, you guys should start a podcast. I would
listen to that.
We came up with this idea before I saw this, but I thought it was good.
That is a podcast. That is a podcast I would listen to if the MAGA and a Marxist guy started that. This is what it's funny.
That
this
would
is what
be kind of awesome.
That would be kind of awesome. Haas and Jackson Hinkle have been talking about a thing called MAGA communism, and there it is right there. But let's watch. Turn down. Here we go.
Old man rage, bro. Yeah, there we go.
So he comes over. There it is. There's the Marxist guy. And he comes over. He looks a little bit like Larry David.
Yeah, I was going to say Larry David.
And he comes up.
Or the McFly, yeah.
He comes over, and I didn't see that he came over with his hand out, but he did. And I think maybe they agree on the Federal Reserve. Maybe that was their coming together point. Yeah, and so watch this. I think they're going to fight. And here's just what happens.
Bring your people together. Hug it out.
Whoa, get a room, guys.
Yes! Now, where in the hell else is something like that going to happen? Where a Bolshevik Marxist and a MAGA guy come together and hug it out. No, I'm going to say, and this might be me bragging, but only at a Jimmy Dore show.
No.
I don't know where else that's going to happen, but it happened at a Jimmy Dore show. And that makes me so proud that happened. That this guy and I've been trying to get a hold of this guy, by the way. He gave me 2 books with phone numbers in them. I've called both of them. They go to law offices that aren't his. He's supposed to be a lawyer. And then this guy's a MAGA guy.
He might have bought him secondhand.
Say it again?
You might have bought him secondhand.
Maybe. But he did. I started to read some of the stuff. There's this thing on immigration that he gave me. It's a paper. It's like 4 or 5 typewritten pages. It was very enlightening about immigration and about the Immigration Naturalization Act and all that stuff that Reagan did and what the real purpose of it was and the real reason why they want immigrants here. I know the real reason why they want to have elite, or as you call them, undocumented, or we used to call them illegal aliens, people who come here illegal. They want them here because then they can't organize. So if they could organize, that would be bad for business, but they can't. They can't join unions. They can't do this. And if they protest, they'll kick them out of the country because they're illegal. And that's a big reason why the border's open right now and why they're flying. Joe Biden's flying in hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. So,
what do you think about that?
And we wouldn't even have known that until. So that's one thing I like about the Epic Times, because it keeps me up on a lot of that stuff. So I'd read that article, I don't know, a week or 2 ago about that. And it's like, how many other, like I say, you can't go to mainstream news sources because they're not telling you any of this stuff. It doesn't fit the agenda, because that's our tax money flying on hundreds of thousands. It's like 300 and something thousand so far that they just been picking up and flying to random places around the United States. We don't know that that was a leaked document that we even found out about it.
And what he's saying makes sense, because I've always said, and you and I have talked about this in the past, and I've always said, if you want to solve this problem, go hard after the companies hiring them. But that will never happen because they're all the donors. They're the donor class.
You've seen what they're going on in New York, right? And with Tyson Foods and stuff.
Yeah, they talk about that a little bit.
Firing all the people that are natural-born citizens here to hire these illegals. Oh, because we need to give them jobs. It's like, why don't you do that to the people that came here legally instead of just saying, oh, well, now we got to give these people green cards and make them legal?
Like he just said, because they're easier to control. They can't unionize. They can't come together and protest unfair conditions, because if they do, they'll just throw them out of the country.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, it's pretty messed up. Like I say, this can't be like not organized. You know what I mean?
I mean, a couple of years ago, if you would have said that, I would have thought you were crazy. I mean, I don't even nothing's too crazy at this point.
Oh, I know. It's like something new comes out. It's like that kind of almost doesn't really surprise me.
Story.
There's a little bit more.
And we're going to cover that next.
I did a little bit about how they bring in legally. They bring in people from South America and Central America on visas. And part of the reason they want a foreign workforce is because you have meatpacking plants where people can't talk to each other because they're speaking 40 different languages.
And they can't organize.
They can't organize, exactly.
Right. So this makes me super proud that this happened. This is the quintessential thing that I would want to have happen at a Jimmy Dore show. When people ask about my audience, I go, there's everybody from far. I go, we have MAGA people, we have hippies, we have old people, we have young people, we have white, we have black, we have union organizers. I have business owners. It's a cross section of America. It is like when I went to see George Carlin. I was super impressed with this. The thing I noticed the most about George Carlin was his audience. His audience was exactly the same. He had all different stripes of people from all different. I saw a nun there. There was, there was all kinds of people at his show, and that's what I
got to see Carlin live. I'm very jealous.
That's what I was the most proud of anything. I was the most proud of that. And of this, and that my show brings people together. They realize they're not the enemy. But if you listen to the news, the corporate newspaper, the politicians, they want you to be suspicious of your neighbor. They want you to blame your neighbor for the economic pain you're feeling. And it's not your neighbor. Everybody's suffering under the same bullshit economics. and it's a billionaire class WEF run bullshit economics that favors the rich. And a handful of billionaires will pull the string.
The rich that are killing the poor.
Yeah. And we can end there. I thought that was like such a great clip because it's a good way to kick this off. Like unity.
It does cover a lot. It does cover a lot of the areas. And like say, if you want to listen to, to promote Joe Rogan like he needs it anymore, but his one with Dr. Phil on there, Dr. Phil says the same thing. He's like, we got to start talking to each other because this just yelling back and forth is what they want. And it's not getting us anything better down the road. We're just dividing farther and farther. And if we don't start coming back to the middle, it's like we might have our disagreements, but we still need to talk to each other and hash things out like we used to. And it's like, even at the end, it's like, hey, I don't agree with this, but I see your point here, and coming to a mutual understanding. That's what they're the most threatened by.
Coming together on political issues that we share a common interest on, right? Like economics and stuff. Like that's the thing. I was totally swept up in the anti-Trump stuff during his first run because I watched MSNBC and I watched Young Turks and I watched all these bought and paid for Democratic, media arms. And once the Russia stuff started happening, I started getting skeptical. I'm like, now wait a minute. If the president was really a secret spy of Russia and they had the evidence, there's no
he would have been arrested and hung up in this town square for everybody to see.
Yeah, if they had evidence for this claim and they're still running with that shit.
Well, I think they must know that there's a certain amount of people that thrive off of that bubble.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
All they got to do is keep pushing that narrative, and these people get all riled up. Yeah, I know. The big wide-eyed, crazy, people you see on the streets, like, oh my God, he's a Nazi, Russia, right? It's like, holy crap, man. It's mind blowing.
That is a good segment for this other clip I want to show you real quick. And this one's much shorter, but it's Joe Rogan and Kurt Metzger, who's from Jimmy Dore's show, talking about the New York Times. And if you haven't seen this, you're going to love it. I haven't
seen this one yet.
Went to Daddy's forbidden closet of mystery. Oh, okay. I won't. Don't look into Hillary's email.
That's a hilarious one, to infantilize people to the point.
So this goes into what we were talking about with the corporate media, and just watch, dude.
We're telling them, don't
this.
research things.
Yeah.
We'll handle that. We're the professionals. Meanwhile, we lie all the time.
They're doing to us what they did to Haiti. Yeah. And the shit we do to other countries, they're going to do to you. So the shit we did to Haiti, which is never let them have their own leaders and coup them when they had one elected one, that's us now. Now that's us. We're going to pass a law so you can't vote for the guy you want. Why is he even being allowed to run at all if it's such a fascism is coming? I don't even understand the messages are so mixed. And the only way to believe them is to be highly frightened all the time.
New York Times has just started doing this new thing on Instagram.
This is what I want you to see.
Where they take the actual writers and they have the writers talk about the issues.
I'm leaving.
And when you see they don't understand what they're doing. This is exactly who we thought was writing these things. It's like this very effeminate guy and this woman that it's like the kind of woman that seems like
she would never done this.
Do at a party, like talk down to you, and it's
just who you thought.
Yeah, exactly. The type of people that would, these ultra liberal, out of touch people.
Yeah.
And these people are talking about, one of the guys was talking about Donald Trump's words being taken out of context, that it would be a bloodbath because he was talking about the auto industry and the economy. And then this guy starts bringing up other episodes of violent rhetoric.
They're going to show it.
It's hilarious. But you got to watch this. Look. Give me some blood. Give me some
God,
blood. No,
what I guessed.
Seized on those comments and said they were an example of him calling for political violence or predicting violent actions if he didn't win in November. His supporters said that those comments were taken out of context.
Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Trump has a history of using violent rhetoric dating back to his 2016 campaign. That language took on new significance after the January 6th attack on the Capitol in 2021.
We're talking about
throughout
that
his
next.
third campaign for president, he's been getting a lot of attention for the way he talks about violence and retribution on the trail. He suggested
exactly. So this is the New York Times.
It's all falling apart.
This is these hard-nosed reporters with a cup of coffee that are like fucking chasing down Lees, and they're pulling their hair out, and they're meeting people in back alleyways. This is Woodward and Bernstein.
Do people think that's
this is Watergate?
Like
no, but I mean they're essentially like ultra hard left activists that are masquerading as journalists, and everything has their opinion on it. Every front page article.
Yeah. And that right there is why Joe Rogan is a far right extremist.
I know, right? Because he's
an anti-vaxxer.
He's actually defending truth.
Yeah,
you know, and I mean, if you go back to a lot of Joe Rogan's earliest episodes, he's pretty liberal, pretty left leaning, you know, but the more of these guests he has on that can articulate what their message is, you know, you got to make sense. I mean, because I know sometimes I'm like, did I just come across really weird on that? Because in my head, I had it going pretty good. And then I don't know if it came out my mouth the correct way.
No, it does. Like what you're saying, what I value is intellectual consistency, right? Yeah. So like, to give you a good example, My Body, My Choice.
Yeah, right.
Great for abortion, not so much for vaccines.
Yeah, right. Like, then it's like, no, I get to make a choice there. It's like, well, which one is it?
Like that, and I mean, just the whole logic behind. Like, I got into it with some other relatives because I already had COVID, and they're like, you need to get the vaccine, and I'm like, wait, like that's not how.
Natural immunity was not a thing at that point.
I had it.
Natural immunity was good before COVID, but with COVID it didn't work.
Yeah. There's a little bit more they talk about in this that might be worth discussing. But
they're also masquerading as activists. They're bourgeois twits. Yeah. They have a lifestyle brand, which is I'm a Sex in the City guy or gal, and I work in the paper. They do the same amount of work.
He's so right about that too. Like that's the biggest problem with the media is the way that they talk down to the audience. Like the Trump people, again, I bought the propaganda, like the deplorables or whatever. It's like, like you're calling people who like work for a living like dumbasses. Bill Maher does it all the time.
And that's still the same with the Russia thing. They still push that stuff. It's like, these deplorables, you know, they don't even know what they're voting for, blah, blah, blah. It's like, actually, a lot of these people are pretty involved now because they're getting tired of being screwed by the upper class that are pushing all these narratives.
I did a video about Bill Maher, and it was so good. It was him talking to Andrew Sullivan. You know who he is? He's like kind of a shaved head, beard, gay, conservative guy.
I probably would if I seen him.
Yeah, and then one of the guys from MSNBC, I think it was Ari Melber, right? And they're talking about Nikki Haley, and Andrew Sullivan's like, Andrew Sullivan's like, conservative voters know that Nikki Haley is a neocon, and they don't want that. Like they like Trump because he's. And Bill Maher's like, voters don't think about that. Oh, who's she a neocon? Like voters aren't thinking about that.
Well, you know what? I would have to say that early 2000s, a mass majority, I would say, of voters didn't. I didn't even start voting until I think Bush's second term.
Yeah.
Then I got old enough that I started paying attention, and it was kind of my old boss. It was like, hey, you know what? You don't even want to look at your paycheck and have to see what I have to take out of your checks, you know, being like 25 and, you know, single and not married, you know, they hammer you with taxes. And it's like, I don't know how that's fair, but I guess since you're of the working age, you know, you can afford to give up more of your money.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about taxes for me is I would be fine with paying taxes if it actually went to stuff that helped like me and my family and like other people. But
and I think a lot of people do that. But then, like you say, when Rand Paul comes out and starts calling out the waste and and just the different bureaucracies that get big, huge budgets, and then they're giving away millions of dollars to, you know, study stupid stuff that makes. It's like, I can tell you if cocaine's going to make these quail in Japan promiscuous or whatever, you know, it's like, it probably will. It'll get them all amped up and they'll just want to screw each other left and right. You know, that's what cocaine does. We've seen what it does to people. Why do we need to test it on, you know, spend $2 million or whatever it is for somebody else to study it on quail?
because someone's making money on the back end.
And it's I mean, it just it doesn't make any logical sense.
Because when you see those, a day in the life of Google, first they go to the chair.
It's Twitter. Yeah, that video is amazing.
Yeah, and they don't even make that. Well, New York Times, that's the big time. So all the plum jobs, like it's kind of similar to when people were mad that Seinfeld, they were like demanding to know why riding to get coffee with Seinfeld in cars isn't diverse enough.
Yeah.
And he goes, because Seinfeld, every time they bring these things up to him, I love his fucking response to that. But at a place like the New York Times, they have to go, oh, we need to bring these. So all like, how exactly you put it, you could guess what they look like. All of them have moved up from like the Gamergate, which at the time I was an adult and I was like.
So anyway, he's talking about how all the like kind of like social media type reporter people who like worked for like
BuzzFeed, the fact checkers
are now like in the Washington Post and the New York Times and stuff.
Yeah, and well, that's part of the reason I left Facebook is because the fact checkers. And
God.
if you check their profiles though, they all work for those places, so you're supposed to say, oh, well, they work for this place here, so they must be, telling the truth. But all they were doing was censoring.
Well, I wanted to show this clip real quick too, man. You know it, I'm sure, but
continues to have a hold over white rural voters.
Well, let's talk about this real quick.
That's just them projecting, I mean, everything's a class warfare now. It's rich
these guys
and poor,
wrote a book.
It's white, it's black, it's or whatever. So yeah, they all know the rules. So the ones I love to watch the most are the clips of every news station parroting the same exact line. It's like, yeah, you're super trustworthy. I'm going to believe all of you guys.
Watch how she frames this. Like, this is, I don't know if you've seen this, but watch
it's not Joe Biden. Seen here as a boy on the right side of your screen who went to public school, is the son of a used car salesman and was born to a middle-class family in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Instead, it is Trump here on the left side, a private school educated son of a New York City real estate tycoon who became a millionaire at 8 years.
So I just want to pause this for a second and ask, like, and I know this is like a propaganda technique, but like, notice how Trump's photo is like blurrier.
Yeah,
because I was going to say, like, if
Trump's
so rich,
did they not have anything closer to like Biden's coloring back?
I was going to say, if Trump's so
he's
rich,
a billionaire, goes to private school. How many people wouldn't send their kids to private school if they could?
How come he couldn't afford a good photographer?
Right, his dad is already rich. It's like, wow.
But it's literally like it's a propaganda technique. It's like they make it a little hazier, and they're like, why would voters vote for this guy who's rich instead of this guy who comes from humble
look how
beginnings?
Pretty his picture is compared to this guy. I mean, he's trash.
Also neglecting to mention that this guy has been in politics for 50 years with a long track record of doing terrible things. The other guy has
lying and flip-flopping like all of them do. And it's like
flip-flopping, you change your mind. Like, you get new information. I can honor that if you have a good reason for your flip-flop, but
or if you have a good record with it. His flip-flops, though, are just like, the political winds are blowing this way. It's not what I believe, but I'm going to blow this way, too, because it's going to help my next election.
That's a real flip-flop, yeah. Yeah,
and it's plagiarism, I mean, he was on TV saying, I don't know how many different things, claiming all these claims, then somebody calls him out on it, like, oh, well, actually, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, you've done that your whole life, you grifter.
I also think the answer to her question here, you told me. Because she goes, why would like middle class voters choose this rich like boarding school kid over the guy who's from Scranton? And it's like, you said it best. Because when I asked you, I was like, why would you vote for Trump? And you said, because he's not a Bush or a Clinton. He's not part of the anointed political class.
Yeah, because I mean,
that's why they all hate him.
How often do you get somebody, and in the older time days, you had politicians, but a lot of them owned businesses and understood how the workings of capitalism were. And they're like, hey, I don't like this or this, of what the government's doing. I'm going to go and I'm going to do my public service or whatever if I can get elected. And then once they're done, they go back to the whatever they were doing before, back to their business. So nowadays, it's just you get elected. That's your job. You're getting elected to a job in Congress or the presidency to make money.
You die in Congress, like Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or
how many other ones?
Mitch McConnell had a stroke on camera the other day. Did you see that when he froze in the?
Yeah, wasn't it? Who was it? There was somebody just recently that just died, wasn't there? I can't remember who it was, but
yeah, it wasn't Feinstein. I don't.
Yeah,
remember.
that was a little bit ago. I remember that.
Oh, it's like right on the tip of.
There was some older white guy, wasn't it?
It was someone that I was like, it was Joe Lieberman.
Yeah.
Joe Lieberman, the guy who blocked the public option from Obamacare, the guy who was anyway, let's watch it a little bit more.
Years old and didn't have to serve because he claimed he had bone spurs in his little feet. So,
did Joe Biden serve in the military?
I don't know if
his kids did.
Yeah, he might have been in the Navy as well. I don't remember. I mean, you don't ever hear anything about it, so it must not have been anything too. I think it's been in politics too long. I don't know if he's had time to be in the military.
So why is it that Trump appeals so much to a group he couldn't be more different from? Joining us now.
Because he's not a Bush or a Clinton.
Professor of Political Science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Tom Schaller, and journalist and opinion writer Paul Waldman. Their new book out tomorrow is entitled White Rural Rage, The Threat to American Democracy. And Tom, we'll start with you. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? You would
voters a threat to democracy.
Think, as we pointed out, looking at Joe Biden's background and Donald Trump's, that the opposite would be true.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30.
You're a threat, Justin.
I tell you what, I'm a white. Well, I don't know if Pleasant Grove's not so much rural anymore. It's getting to be quite the metropolis around here.
Yeah. Well.
Polls and national studies to demonstrate this. So we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism, and
okay, I just want to volunteer. Conspiracy theories. You guys said the president was a secret Russian spy for like 4 years. 6. You're still doing it. And you have the balls to call these people conspiracy theorists?
Well, they can, because they've got the whole media behind them to spew the same stuff.
Yeah.
So they can keep that bullcrap alive by everybody else is going to agree with them. I don't know how that all works. I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of these meetings on, okay, this is our agenda. This is how we're all going. We'll send the email out to all the other networks and we'll all just go with it.
Right. These people, like the part that stuck out to me and why I did that little remix song is the part where she says, voters are a threat to democracy. Insert any demographic group you want there. But white rural ones, it's okay to attack them. If you said like Puerto Rican urban voters are a threat to democracy, you would never hear the end of the backlash against that.
Well, and the funny thing is, it's like, I don't know what they're trying to gain by all this. It's like, are they trying to change the people's minds by calling them an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about and you're a conspiracy theorist?
I'll tell you exactly what they're doing. They're trying to turn as much of Trump's base against him as they can. There was a story recently. I got so mad at my cousin for posting it about Trump selling Bibles. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, I almost bought one. They're pretty cool.
So here's the thing. The narrative in the media is, oh, Trump's so broke because of his court cases. He has to sell Bibles and like, what a disgusting person. Well, the reality is that the guy, Lee Greenwood, was selling the Bible long before Trump. He just got Trump to endorse it. I don't even know if he's making any money off it. Maybe he is. He's probably getting a kickback of some sort. By the same token, at least that's like honest. He's doesn't have a no-show job in Ukraine.
Yeah, or like his sneakers, it's like he's a capitalist. He runs businesses. I mean, he's selling stuff. If you don't, guess what? I'm just gonna blow everybody's minds here. This is how capitalism works. If you don't want that product, you don't buy it. It's weird. I don't know. I mean, but dictators, he's probably forcing people to buy it, I'm sure.
Yeah, he has a diehard fan base that he can sell anything to.
Oh, yeah, for
Obama
sure.
has the same cult of personality behind him. A lot
Well,
of these people
and even
do.
at that, it's like, okay, Obama leaves, gets a Netflix deal for $10 million right off the bat.
Of course.
I mean, I haven't seen his video, but I did see a thing about it that I think it was Matt Kim was talking about it. He's like,
I did see
okay,
that.
this Leave the World Behind, this video or this movie by Obama. He's like, here it is talking about what was it? Ships, at the first of the movie, there's this ship coming in, can't control itself, comes into the beach. Well, here we are. Here's ships losing power and taking out bridges, and he just starts going through all these different points from the movie to stuff that's like really happening. It's like, dang, that's to them a conspiracy theory. But what happens when after you start finding the facts, that becomes a conspiracy fact? So who's the real conspirators? The people with the theories, or the ones that are making this stuff come true?
Well, you know where that term comes from, right? Like the term conspiracy theory, I'm sure you've seen it, originated after the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's your deep state for you there.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Which nobody will acknowledge that either. Deep state,
I have to make this meme because not even a day apart. I rarely log into Facebook because I have a lot of what I call brunch lib friends who are just as the cult members. And this lady that I follow, I'm friends with, she posted this graphic that says, "There is no deep state. You're just deeply stupid." And I kid you not even 24 hours later, I log into Twitter and someone has posted a screenshot from a New York Times article. And the headline of the article is, actually, the deep state is kind of awesome. and it's like a whole thing where they're like, we talked to this guy from the FBI and this guy from the CIA. They're actually really, really cool, you guys.
Yeah. Well, and I don't remember who it was, but essentially they've admitted it over the years, saying basically, look, we're still here. We'll go through 5-6 presidents, and we're still here. The presidents come and go. So if you think you're electing somebody that's really controlling the show around here, that's your illusion.
This guy makes it real clear that there ain't no one at the wheel. He's not at the wheel. Watch this. I'm sure you've seen it.
I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. It was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France looked at me.
First of all, Mitterrand's dead. Second of all, he doesn't even know what country the guy's from.
And said, why, how long are you back for?
I love the anyway, that's all we have to show that. The guy's clearly incompetent.
But I love coming up with this election.
Fake laughter in the background.
Yeah, coming up with this election, that's your guy. And I've heard, okay, so I'll add to the conspiracy theories. I've heard about the Joe Biden in May is going to get replaced with somebody like Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or something like that.
That's
Michelle Obama, unless she was forced to, she's got money. They've got a beach house in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, why would you be stupid enough to take on the presidency? Look what happened to Obama after his 8 years. He went grayer than Santa Claus. It's like it's not a fun job. You're there basically. You got to play the game. You are the puppet that you've got to play the game of the people that are actually controlling the show.
Well, and again, that's why they universally hate Trump, because he's not easy to control. I'm not saying that he's
more of a wild card,
that he doesn't have his own group of flaws. Like he does. He's by no means like my idea of a hero figure. But by the same token, I've said this before about the difference between him and Bernie Sanders is deeply ingrained in the political class, and they could make threats to him that they can't make to Trump. And Trump has the balls and the resources to take them on in a way. If they had done the type of stuff to Bernie that they're doing to Trump, he would have folded. He couldn't have held up in all those lawsuits and stuff like that.
Well, and then if you actually take the time to read the charges, they're ridiculous. I mean, like
Dude.
the Jon Stewart thing.
Yeah.
Oh, he overvaluated his buildings, to get these loans. It's like, okay, so he did that. He paid them back. What's the crime exactly again? But then everybody else is like, oh yeah, everybody does that. That will acknowledge it. Everybody does that.
I'm gonna. That's a perfect segue for this Tim Pool clip. I'm not gonna play it's only a couple minutes. Most of these other clips are pretty short.
Argument. You've got Democrats saying the banks were defrauded because Trump lied to get a better loan. There is no functional distinction between lying for cash for a loan and lying for cash for a sale. Either way, an individual assumes a debt. It's nonsensical. If Trump said, my property is worth $1 billion, the bank then went, well, we just blindly believe you. Here's the $1 billion.
Right.
Jon Stewart went, my property's worth 17.5. And the guy went, okay, well, I believe you. Here's a 17.5.
So here's what's crazy about this whole thing with Jon Stewart. And I have a couple good clips on it, but what it did is expose how fucked up the New York real estate market is, because he sold his place for like $17 million, but the tax value on it is like $1 million. So he was paying a tiny fraction of the value of that. And it's not just him. Like everyone in those rich penthouses in Manhattan has the same thing going for them. And so what that Kevin O'Leary got.
Even me, if I'm going to sell this place I live in right now, would I not want to say this place is worth more than it is and hope somebody gives me that? Or then I got a negotiating point to negotiate down to what I'm willing to accept.
That's like standard business practice. You always start high.
But we're going to make indictments over this it's just like Trump says, it's election interference.
Yeah.
If this wasn't an election year, none of this crap would be happening.
And just imagine them doing something similar to Bernie Sanders, because they would have gotten that petty if he hadn't ducked out. He would have. Well,
I think some, because you know how the Democrat Party works. It's like, we have our person. This guy's gaining steam on our person. So they got to get to a certain point where this guy's really a threat, and he's not going to play ball with everything we want to accomplish. So what do we got to do? We either got to find something on him or whatever happened to get him to bow down. And
the point you made to me initially that changed my view of Trump, it just keeps bringing in my head. He's not a Bush or a Clinton. He's not part of the anointed political class. Someone like Joe Biden, they've been grooming that guy for years to be in that position. That's why they put up Al Gore. That's why they put up John Kerry. That's why, I remember the primary with John Kerry. There were a couple of other really good candidates in there, like John Edwards. As soon as he got some steam, they're like, "Oh, he had an affair."
Some dirt comes out somewhere. I mean, and that's what a lot of people have said on the right. Like, if you're going to run for one of these spots, you better be clean, because you'll get eaten up in a quick hurry.
But I think Trump changed that to a degree too, because it's like all these people. These same people that are so outraged by Trump's dalliances with E. Jean Carroll or like Stormy Daniels or whatever. Yo, you voted for Bill Clinton. Joe Biden has 2 very credible rape accusations against him.
Yeah,
and
but
all
that
kinds
was
of video
swept
of him
under the
touching
rug
kids inappropriately.
Oh, all the time. I mean, you watch the montages of that too, and it's like, man, this guy is creepy.
That stuff is. But the point of me saying that is like that stuff is dead, because they try to do it to Matt Gaetz too. They try like,
and
the
DOJ
DOJ eventually had to
underage
drop
girls and stuff. Yeah.
They can frame anything. Like, remember Anthony Weiner?
And all that. Well, and it's like the laptops. It's like his got exposed. His son's got. We got these 50 FBI agents to sign off saying it's Russian disinformation.
Right.
I was like seeing that. I'm like, okay, the guy from the computer shop was the one that turned it in, saying, man, there's some messed up stuff on this laptop. Maybe you guys should take a look at it. And then everything kind of went sideways from there. And I mean, that guy almost lost his business because of it. Started getting death threats and stuff from people on the Biden side. It's like, this guy's he's a Russian agent too. It's like, oh, come on, where does this end?
I tried to make the argument to my uncle, who is a very brunch Libby, that I was like, yeah, it's like when my card gets declined at a restaurant, and the waitress comes back and says, "Sir, your card was declined." It's like, "Oh, that's Russian propaganda. Run it again."
Right.
And then she goes and runs it again, and it still declines. So I'm like, "Why are you working for Putin, ma'am?"
Right? Yeah.
Like
It makes no sense.
What's going on?
No, it's nuts. It just blows me away to just see the amount of people that will just blatantly just suck this stuff up and then call you the dummy for not believing it.
Yeah, that's like, I don't want to harp on my brother because I love my brother,
right?
But it's
we all do. But they got to wake up eventually too.
Yeah,
we can't wipe their butts for them their whole lives.
you cannot. And the thing that blows me away the most, and I see this a lot on Twitter, is like, especially on the left, right? Like, I'm going to criticize the left because they can see corporate capture in all these different industries, in the the oil industry or the media industry, or but then everything about COVID is 100% true,
right?
It's like, and I'm not saying everything's a facade, but like, have a little bit of skepticism. Your line of skepticism is very hard, and it ends at a certain point that's a little suspicious.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's watch a little bit more of this.
Yeah, keep going.
The argument is that when it came to selling a property, the person who wanted to buy it chose to give that money for it, as if a loan and debt is anything different. When Donald Trump proposed they give him this money, they said yes. They chose to do it. They lent him the money. In either circumstance, the individual either buying the property or giving the loan has...
The thing that's the wildest to me about this case too is the bank said they were happy with the loan. If I was like,
they testified basically for Trump's defense, but then, I mean, I don't want to get
it's
too
a
far
civil
out in the
suit,
weeds.
so it's not a trial, so he doesn't get to present evidence, and they did that on purpose, so they can go into the news and say Trump's indicted.
Yeah, but who's pushing it?
It's clear someone
the DA,
I can't remember. I can't
DA
remember who
that was
supported
by none other than the boogeyman, George Soros. I mean,
I think
his model though is exactly what's going on. That's his model.
I don't doubt it, but one of the points I think it was PBD who made this point that I thought was so good. If you look at like the public financing of campaigns, the biggest donor to the Democratic Party is trial lawyers.
Oh yeah. Well, they make out how much money on this with the Trump stuff right now. How much money right now is going into all that?
The other conspiracy theory,
like perpetual war, perpetual lawsuits.
Oh yeah. Well, the other conspiracy theory that I think there's some credence to is the Democrats want Trump to win because he's a good fundraising asset.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they lose. The same bullshit's going to continue whether the Democrats win or lose.
Those people at the top are still making their money either way.
Yeah. But then if they lose, they can switch back into, oh, it's the end of the world mode and give us all your money to get rid of Trump again.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's watch a little bit more of this because
it's a requirement to their own due diligence, which both parties in these scenarios did. So I am only facetiously arguing that Jon Stewart committed fraud because of his own statement. I know that may be hard for many of these leftists and liberals to understand because they're not quite smart people. Fine.
So what happened was Tim made this case and then they attacked him as if he was accusing Jon Stewart of fraud. But what he was actually doing was pointing out the hypocrisy of something that everyone does. So this last clip, and then we'll seal this up and move on. But
Stewart's former penthouse is the exact same citation method and metric that New York Attorney General Letitia James used to value Trump's private and personal properties, and then sued him for inflating those assets. Market value was never considered throughout the case, and then this is something that Stewart made mention of too.
Wow.
The New York assessor's valuation on Stewart's former penthouse is the exact same citation method and metric that the New York Attorney General Letitia James used to value Trump's private and personal properties and then sued him for inflating those assets.
Yeah.
So it's a good point to make. Listen to what they say.
I did not even realize that. This case, I thought the case was bullshit before. Now it's mind-boggling that they even brought this case, much less won it in court.
And there you have
But
it.
then how does it go along, though, at the end, basically saying that the only difference was between Trump's and his is that Trump...
They said that he lied about the
size
but
and
again,
stuff. But then again, it's the bank's due diligence to find
exactly.
out if that's really what he's saying. And
Right,
if you listen to Trump, everything's bigger and better. I mean, he should really live in Texas because everything's bigger and better there, right?
Yeah, and everyone also always does that.
Yeah, it's like I said, I would do it to my house too, but it's not saying that I'm going to get a buyer that's going to agree with what I assess it at. They're going to do their due diligence, get the bank and the estimators and everybody come out, measure everything out, and say, no, it'd be nice if you could get that much money, but it's really only valued at this. I'd be like,
yeah,
shit,
They're like Tim said, they're not just going to go, a bank is not just going to go, okay, well, you said it's that much. Here's your money.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh yeah, my house is worth $1 gazillion. Here's your $1 gazillion. Yeah, it just don't work that way.
Right. This is the whole premise is ridiculous. All right, we've been on for an hour now.
Yeah, we better save something for the next time.
I've got so much stuff, man. I want you to see this real quick.
46-year history. There has never been a nation's 246-year history. There has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it. And our nation's...
That's it.
Yeah, so I love how they can look straight into the camera and tell you that stuff, too.
I also love that him and the Democrats are like bosom buddies now. They're on the same page.
Part of the uniparty. And I mean, I don't know what Dick Cheney's into now, and his daughter Liz Cheney, she's pretty much a loser if you ask me, but she's still out there running around. The networks are still paying her to come on, bash Trump. It's a business, and it's good business. Trump is really good business for all these networks, because when he's not in office, what do they have to talk about?
It's true. Well, I want to show you this real quick because you said you asked what Dick Cheney was up to. And I want to show you what Dick Cheney's been up to. So I'm gonna.
Oh, I'm sure nothing corrupt.
Here it is. When you so this post from Mike Benz was where I got this video. When you watch this video, bear in mind that Dick Cheney was both CEO and chairman of the board of Halliburton Ukraine LLC, Halliburton's Ukraine subsidiary that had just struck a deal with Ukraine's state gas giant in 2019, 2 months before Zelensky was elected. Halliburton had big plans to profit from replacing Russian gas in 2022 when the war broke out, but those shale rights were in territories in East Ukraine under Russian occupation. If a president pushes peace, Cheney gets nothing but donuts. Hey, Dick, how many shares you still have?
Well, why now do you think all these people are coming out against Trump? Because Trump's minutes, and they feel threatened.
Because he's a threat to their grift.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. Find me the documents that show where any $1 of our money has gone that's gone to Ukraine. Of the 100 and some odd billion dollars that's gone over there. What did it buy? I mean, I heard a report that a bunch of Zelensky's top officials had to be, quote, let go because they were siphoning out millions of dollars out of this because nobody was keeping track of it.
I'm gonna tell you just a wild story. I went out with this girl who's Ukrainian a couple weeks ago, and she told me this story about how corrupt it is. Like, one of the guys who worked there brought grenades home from the front lines as a gift for his son, and one of them actually
go play with these out back.
Accidentally detonated one of them or something. That's how insane it is there right now. And it's the thing that's so disheartening to me is it's man, we're using these people clearly, and
well, that's the thing. How many nations are we using? Not us personally, but our representatives. How many people are they using around the world?
Dude,
Yeah, look at all these countries that are basically beholden to the United States because of the amount of money that we dish out that we don't. I mean, it's monopoly money.
Yeah.
But somewhere somebody's got enough on somebody that they still feel that they can use it for something.
This is the thing that, like, when you were talking about Ukraine, like, how much money are we giving to Ukraine? Holy shit. Like, how much? Forget Ukraine. Look at that.
Well, start adding all those up. How much money is that?
It's down here at the bottom. Total
2,513 billion.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to equate that.
No,
You know?
So, to my understanding, what isn't a billion, like, 1,000 millions, or
yeah, something like that. It's beyond
wait,
my math
no.
comprehension.
I think
at the
it's a
moment.
million millions, because that's like that. They haven't even got to like the 100. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a math.
2,513 billion. Yeah,
I'm not a math surgeon.
that's a lot of billions. That's all I know.
Yeah, but again, it's like you look at this chart and you go, wow, and we can't afford healthcare, or like to take care of like our veterans, or like the homeless thing, right? It's like most of these people, man, I see them all the time. I've talked to several of them. They're mentally ill, dude. Like they're people that have nowhere to go. There's no way that I saw a lady yelling at a parking meter.
Yeah.
The other day. Like, she's not getting a job at McDonald's, but she has no family, no one to take care of it. And I think, some of them are drug users, but a lot of them use drugs because they're on the streets. They're not on the streets because
they're trying to escape
drugs.
reality. And I mean,
Yeah.
to some extent, you can't blame them. But, we have roadmaps that we could try. There's no political will in it. Like the homeless and drug problems. Like, okay, Spain did the same thing. They at one point had legalized all drugs. Their economy and everything went to shit. And they're like, okay, let's course correct. And now instead of spending all this money incarcerating these people, let's set up rehab programs and get them back into society being productive. And it's worked out really well.
Yeah,
and so,
totally. You know what? Honestly,
too, it works well though, and it doesn't make, just to your same point. I think it was Collion Noir. He was on Joe Rogan's, and he pointed out, it's like in California, the homeless population is a business. He's like,
totally.
Keep increasing the budget every year and never solve the problem. And just they keep making it worse. So they're like, oh, well, we need a bigger budget. We just haven't had enough money to fix this problem. And they're all making 6-figure salaries.
Totally. That problem, again, is a problem with everything, because you see the same thing with, like, someone was talking about, like, Susan Komen. Like, the more money you give to them, like, they haven't stopped cancer. Like, what are they doing with this money? Like, they haven't made any progress whatsoever with breast cancer.
How many decades?
Right. And
other than we can inject you with some other poison that'll either kill you or it might kill the cancer. We'll just have to roll the dice.
I think it was Jimmy that did a piece on the trans thing. And it's like, look, I'm fine with people who are 18 plus being trans, doing whatever, having surgeries, whatever. But like, the reason that this is being pushed so hard as a thing is because there's money in those treatments. There's money for pharma in hormone therapy, and
and doctors that will perform the surgeries and
the plastic surgeries.
I mean, you name it. That whole it's an industry. It's a whole industry, and they're all. And again, the sad thing is, it's making money off of our kids. The people that are supposed to be the future of this country. And they're using them as pawns to make money.
Tim Pool brought up a great point with that stuff too. It's like, you can't get a tattoo before you're 18. Like, you're drastically changing your body. So I think that there's a general consensus on this stuff, but it gets used as a method to be like, you're a bigot or you're a racist, like the immigration thing, like Jimmy just described. Like, they want these immigrants in the country for cheap labor. And so they're going to pretend that you're a racist for pointing out that it's a problem, but it's just like, there are plenty of Mexicans and like legal immigrants who view it as a problem too,
because they've assimilated and figured out what the American way of life really means.
Sure.
And they see it's unsustainable. I mean, anybody that can do basic math can see it's like, okay, you bring in 500 million people, just as an exaggeration, but you've only got 100,000 people paying into the system that they're all using, that we all use. How long does it take before that collapses? That's essentially what's happening right now. It's like, yeah, you can put these guys in there. I mean, are they still going to be paying taxes and all that stuff? Because they have no number like we have Social Security numbers that we pay our taxes and stuff off of, and that's how they know who you are and what you've been paying over the years. But if there's no way to document these people, I don't even know how they would pay them. I guess just write them a check and say it was for equipment maintenance. I mean, you basically got to do a lot of shenanigans to make this work in your favor, even as a business. Yeah. Or you just, I don't know how they do it. I don't. It can't be straight, on the
well,
path we all pay.
I've heard the argument too that some of them pay into Social Security they'll never get, but I don't know how much of a difference that's actually making. So
yeah,
and again, go after the companies. Go if you went hard on these companies and started like really auditing them and punishing them for hiring outside of legal bounds, the problem would largely be resolved. But you will never see that type of an action taken against business who's taking advantage of it, because they're the ones
taking advantage of it. But look at the circle. Where does that money go? That they make all these money, they give it to these politicians, and the policies favor the companies versus the American taxpayer.
1,000%. And going into our next segment, because you have to see this stuff. I got to be careful, like how we talk about this, because I don't want to get my channel shut down, and we are broadcasting on it right now. But this is a video from YouTube, and I think the stuff that this guy's explaining is like, if you haven't seen it yet, it's worth. I'm sure you've seen some of this good stuff, but
ways to actually start the story is really with the story of internet freedom, and it switched from internet freedom to internet censorship because free speech on the internet was an instrument of statecraft almost from the outset of the privatization of the internet in 1991.
So what he kind of, just to set this up a little bit, this guy's kind of going into the weeds on how the U.S. has typically used media to overthrow other governments, and how that weapon is now being turned inward.
We quickly discovered through the efforts of the Defense Department, the State Department, and our intelligence services that people were using the internet to congregate on blogs and forums, and free speech was championed more than anybody by the Pentagon, the State Department, and our sort of CIA cutout NGO blob architecture as a way to support dissident groups.
So just so you know, this guy calls the deep state the blob because it's always like growing. It's
right. Absorb all this stuff and just keep growing.
In order to help them overthrow authoritarian governments as they were sort of built. Essentially, the internet free speech allowed kind of insta-regime change operations to be able to facilitate the foreign policy establishment's State Department agenda. Google is a great example of this. Google began as a DARPA grant by Larry Page and Sergey Brin when they were Stanford PhDs, and they got their funding as part of a joint CIA-NSA program to chart how, quote, birds of a feather flock together online through search engine aggregation. And then 1 year later, they launched Google and then became a military contractor quickly thereafter. They got Google Maps by purchasing a CIA satellite software, essentially. And the ability to use free speech on the internet as a way to circumvent state control over media in places like Central Asia or all around the world was seen as a way to be able to do what used to be done out of CIA station houses or out of embassies or consulates in a way that was totally turbocharged. And all of.
Have you ever heard of Voice of America?
I think just in passing, probably.
So what Voice of America is it's literally a U.S. propaganda channel that's broadcast in other countries and was only broadcast in other countries until recently. Under Obama, but the Ukrainian girl I was telling you about, she's like, yeah, we grew up listening to Voice of America, and like my dad used to listen to it when he lived in Japan and stuff.
So it's basically the American psyop to other countries.
Exactly. exactly. And that's kind of what he's outlining right here.
The internet free speech technology was initially created by our national security state. VPNs, virtual private networks, to hide your IP address. Tor, the dark web, to be able to buy and sell goods anonymously. End-to-end encrypted chats. All of these things were created initially as DARPA projects or as joint CIA-NSA projects to be able to help intelligence-backed groups to overthrow governments that were causing a problem to the Clinton administration or the Bush administration or the Obama administration. And this plan worked magically from about 1991 until about 2014, when there began to be an about face on internet freedom and its utility. Now, the high watermark of the sort of internet free speech moment was the Arab Spring in 2011, 2012. When
Do you remember that?
Yep. One by one, all of the adversary governments of the Obama administration, Egypt, Tunisia, all began to be toppled in Facebook revolutions and Twitter revolutions. And you,
as a side note, a lot of people don't know this, but fun fact, do you know Obama is related to Dick Cheney?
Really?
He's like a distant cousin. Yeah, there's articles about it. Like when he was getting elected, Cheney's wife was like on TV, like, "Oh, isn't that cute? Like we're distantly related."
you had the State Department working very closely with the social media companies to be able to keep social media online during those periods. There was a famous phone call from Google's Jared Cohen to Twitter to not do their scheduled maintenance so that the preferred opposition group in Iran would be able to use Twitter to win that election. So it was free speech was an instrument of statecraft from the national security state to begin with. All of that architecture, all of the NGOs, the relationships between the tech companies and the national security state had been long established for freedom. In 2014, after the coup in Ukraine, there was an unexpected counter coup where Crimea and the Donbass broke away. And they broke away with essentially a military backstop that NATO was highly unprepared for at the time. They had one last Hail Mary chance, which was the Crimea annexation vote in 2014. And when the hearts and minds of the people of Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation, that was the last straw for the concept of free speech on the internet in the eyes.
That was, I don't know if you remember this under Obama, but remember when Putin annexed Crimea?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Right there, you can see all those people carrying Russian flags.
I mean, Ukraine speaks Russian. Like it used to be a part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And
well,
I mean,
so to get a little bit out in the weeds there, did you watch the Tucker Carlson Putin interview?
I did, of course.
I did too. And, and people slammed Tucker Carlson, like Hillary Clinton comes out, is like, oh, he's Putin's little puppy dog, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? Putin was going to take control of that interview either way. And I'm sure Tucker had a sense that he's like, I don't want to push it too far because I might not make it back out of this room.
But here's the thing that people like Hillary Clinton and Jon Stewart left out. He directly asked Putin to take Evan Gershkovich home.
Yeah.
Did you see that part at the end?
Yep. Right towards the end. And he's like, you know what? That's not off the table, but we'll talk about it. But the
utility of the interview too was to hear Putin talk too. It was kind of like, let's hear what this guy has to say. You don't have to believe it. You can fact check it. You can go into the weeds on it. But as Americans, if we're dumping billions of dollars into this war, we should know what we're getting into.
What I thought was interesting, is he's laying out the history of those countries with Russia.
Yeah. Well, he's
providing
context.
It's like, okay, I see what he's trying to, he's taking the long road to get to that, to his point, but it's like, how many people know the history of that region?
Sure.
Probably like a very slim margin.
And what I was trying to explain to my brother is, look, if there was a civil war going on at the border between Texas and Mexico, and Russia started sending weapons to one side, you don't think we would fucking invade and do something? That's basically what's happening. Like there was a civil war going on. There were, and the U.S. started backing the opposition. And so Putin didn't invade because he wants to take over Ukraine. He invaded because there was a direct threat on his border.
Well, so I wonder now too, because didn't Sweden just join NATO here just recently?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I think is funny is on Twitter, Hillary Clinton came out, or it might have been, it was Clinton or someone came out and was like, Trump will dismantle NATO if he's elected. And one of my lefty friends reposted was like, she thinks this is a bad thing. This is like an ad for Trump.
Right. It's like, what is NATO really, what have we gotten out of NATO besides just an empty hole we keep throwing money into?
Well,
for the
it's
most part. I mean,
yeah,
Putin said for how long now? He's like, quit moving your NATO stuff to my border. And don't annex these other countries into NATO that are on my border. He's like, I'm not doing anything to them. But what do? We keep pushing that button, and we got to keep pushing the Russian narrative. So I think there's something else still going on with using Russia as the bad guy. It's like, why don't we invite Russia into NATO?
You know that they did. He talked about that in the interview with Tucker about asking Clinton.
But what negotiations have our administration even attempted, or even any of the main networks attempted to go over there and interview Putin? You know, they want to slam Tucker for it, but it's like none of you guys are doing it. Why is our political establishment that should be trying to calm this down, not just dump money into Ukraine to fight back against the evil Russians? Like, most of those Russians probably don't want to fight against Ukraine either, but there's that conflict where they're forced into it. And then we're just pushing the button harder and harder into Ukraine by giving them weapons and, you know, basically fighting the proxy war for what? I mean, I think
they
there's
want to topple Putin.
Well, there's something. Yeah. I mean, that annoys the crap out of me is why are we in the business of regime changes? It doesn't benefit. Yeah, it doesn't benefit America though. It doesn't.
It doesn't. Exactly.
Just like, I mean, we've seen it when Hillary Clinton was in there. They toppled Gaddafi. What happened to the region? It fell apart.
Yeah.
ISIS took over because they left. They just leave a vacuum. It's like, yeah, is Gaddafi good? No, but the alternatives are worse.
The vacuum they can sell weapons into. It's like we created ISIS. Like the whole Russia thing, ISIS attacking Russia. That's really odd because someone pointed out that like ISIS Islamic extremists usually like die with the terror, like they kill themselves too, or they you know. And these guys,
they want to be a martyr.
Yeah, these guys didn't want to be martyrs. They ran.
Yeah, and it's almost like, okay, it's like a lot of the neo-Nazis here in America. If you really break it down to who these people are, they're disturbed individuals to begin with that, you know, either are homeless or, you know, whatever. They find a unity. It's like a lot like a gang for the wrong causes. But if you really broke down, it's somebody towards the top using them as their tools, you know, convincing them that, hey, these people are the bad people, and this is why you have such misery in your life. It's the people down here that are doing it to you.
Yep.
And, you know, and it's just a mind game. And they get enough people that go along with it, and then it causes it's a movement. It's a small movement, but it gets the most, like I say, it's a squeaky wheel. It gets got a lot of attention.
It's the cult thing too, you know, like Jimmy with this clip we opened with. It's like they want us to fight each other. They want us to be mad at each other, because if we're mad at each other, we're not looking up and going like, hey, you're fucking all of us.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like if we start talking, and even like you say, if we don't disagree with something, it's not something I'm going to say, you know, I can't talk to you anymore, because this is what I've ran into with people from the left. Now I'll try and argue my point to the best of my ability, but if you're just going to say, no, you're wrong and shut up, you're a loser, blah, 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 and block me or, you know, unfriend me, whatever.
That's
it's
exactly
like,
what happens.
That's on you. That's not on me. You know, it's like, I'm trying to see common ground here, but if you're not willing to cross over into that neutral zone, then I don't know where you go from there. You know, it's like, I'm trying, but.
And the way technology has evolved, it makes it so easy for us to create our own little curated ecosystem where we don't have to like hear anyone's opinion that we don't like, or like deal with anyone that we disagree with.
And I like to hear what the other side's saying, because it's a lot easier to know what you're dealing with. I mean, it's like if you go in blindly into a maze and say, okay, find your way to the other side, it's going to be pretty difficult. But if you know what the maze looks like originally, then you know what, okay, here's what I have to go against what you're saying and why I think this way. But the other side usually in my encounters is, no, this is what really is, and then they just start calling you names and stuff and then shut down the conversation. And then you never get anywhere.
And see, I don't even like to use the term sides anymore because nothing about my political views has changed at all. I'm the same person. I have values that I adhere to. And so my views haven't changed, but the people around me, like you're talking about the left, like during COVID, there was a bunch of people that blocked me because I was skeptical about certain stuff. And I'm like,
yeah,
why not engage?
You weren't allowed to. In that bubble, you weren't allowed to this is what the narrative is. You go out of that, you're kicked out of the club.
Yeah. And that woke me up to so much stuff. I mean, we should get back into this because that was the point. I think that they really started leveraging this stuff. Like that was like a test run for using this type of shit full scale on Americans. Right.
Well, and like what this guy's saying, to me, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant plan because it's worked really effectively.
Absolutely. Listen, and this is the other thing. There's definitely a debate to be had about I'm not against the U.S. being the dominant power in the world, as an American.
Yeah, if we're doing the right things, but in some of these instances, it's just we're festering up the evilest in most people, and then claiming that we're the righteous ones on the other side, but we're the ones that perpetuated it.
Exactly. And that's the thing with someone like Putin. It's like, how can you sit and talk shit about Putin invading Ukraine, which we provoked, by the way, which most people don't know. But still, even if you don't know that, pretend you just believe that Putin did that because he's a madman and just wanted to take over Ukraine.
Yeah.
Give me a list of all the countries that we've done that to since World War II and all the list of countries that Russia's done that to since World War II. And it's not even close. And that's the reason that they view all of our war efforts through the lens of Hitler versus the good guys. Because if you start looking back at the other wars like Vietnam and Korea and Afghanistan and Iraq, you go, oh shit, like we weren't the good guy in any of those.
Well, and so why did that not get put to a stop? When Vietnam, when we found out that it was a false radar blip or whatever,
Yeah.
It's like, but military industrial complex at that point was too big. And they figured out how to make money. So why stop a war when you can make money?
we keep going down side trails. But
I mean,
these are good side trails.
Too easy because there's so many of them.
And NATO at that point declared something that they first called the Gerasimov Doctrine, which is named after this Russian military general who they claimed made a speech that the fundamental nature of war has changed. You don't need to win military skirmishes to take over Central and Eastern Europe. All you need to do is control the media and the social media ecosystem because that's what controls elections. And if you
So isn't that funny that the literal, like the people that are calling everyone Russian spies got their entire idea from a Russian military guy?
Yeah.
Get the right administration into power, they control the military. So it's infinitely cheaper than conducting a military war to simply conduct an organized political
like you were saying, it's very smart.
Influence operation over social media and legacy media. An industry had been created that spanned the Pentagon, the British Ministry of Defense, and Brussels into a organized political warfare outfit, essentially infrastructure that was created, initially stationed in Germany and in Central and Eastern Europe, to create psychological buffer zones, basically to create the ability to have the military work with the social media companies to censor Russian propaganda or to censor domestic right-wing populist groups in Europe who were rising in political power at the time because of the migrant crisis. So you had the systematic targeting.
It's the same thing in Europe. Same thing.
Yeah, if you pay attention to Europe, same stuff's going on over there right now.
Our State Department, by our IC, by the Pentagon, of groups like Germany's AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland there, and for groups in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Now, when Brexit happened in 2016, that was this crisis moment where suddenly they didn't have to worry just about Central and Eastern Europe anymore. It was coming westward, this idea of Russian control over hearts and minds. And so Brexit was June 2016. The very next month at the Warsaw Conference, NATO formally amended its charter to expressly commit to hybrid warfare as this new NATO capacity. So they went from, basically 70 years of tanks to this explicit capacity building for censoring tweets if they were deemed to be Russian proxies. And again, it's not.
So as a very online person, there's this group during the outset of the Ukraine war. They've kind of died out now, but they're called NAFO, N-A-F-O.
Okay.
And it was clearly like a NATO or a CIA cutout of like online trolls that would, if you said something critical of the Ukraine war, they would get you blocked or get you banned and swarm you and like report you and stuff. So
not just Russian propaganda. These were now Brexit groups or groups like Matteo Salvini in Italy, or in Greece, or in Germany, or in Spain with the Vox Party. And now at the time, NATO was publishing white papers saying that the biggest threat NATO faces is not actually a military invasion from Russia. It's losing domestic elections across Europe to all these right-wing populist groups who, because they were mostly working-class movements, were campaigning on cheap Russian energy at a time when the U.S. was pressuring this energy diversification policy. And so they...
Guess who's selling Europe energy now?
Yeah, right.
They made the argument after Brexit, now the entire rules-based international order would collapse unless the military took control over media, because Brexit would give rise to Frexit in France with Marine Le Pen, to Spexit in Spain with the Vox Party, to Italexit in Italy, to Grexit in Germany, to Grexit in Greece. The EU would come apart, so NATO would be killed without a single bullet being fired. And then not only that, now that NATO's gone, now there's no enforcement arm for the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, or the World Bank. So now the financial stakeholders who depend on the battering ram
all of the money
security state would basically be helpless against governments around the world. So from their perspective, if the military did not begin to censor the internet, all of the democratic institutions and infrastructure that gave rise to the modern world after World War II would collapse. So you can imagine the reaction.
May I ask you to pause?
So I have one more clip from that, but let's comment on that a little bit. Like, that's pretty crazy, because now you see why Trump is such a threat to democracy as they see it.
Yeah. Well, and
the democracy they control.
Yeah. Well, you see the big freak out over Elon buying Twitter too.
Yeah.
And then when he goes in there and they start finding all the, actually letting out the inner communications between the head execs of Twitter at the time, and then find out how many people from
and crisply as you just did.
Sorry, I'm trying.
But did anyone at NATO or anyone at the...
Sorry, what you were saying about them out in the
yeah.
Twitter
So and then finding out how many people worked for the FBI or were former FBI agents and CIA agents that worked within the companies. How many people do you think jumped ship from there that got fired, went straight to Facebook and Meta, and all those organizations, because there's still, I still wonder sometimes if people even see half my content most of the time, because I fit into their category of right-wing conspiracies.
Sure. I mean, I do too. I told you about when I posted it's like a Simpsons graphic of like,
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they labeled it as disinformation or something. I was like, what?
Oh,
the most ridiculous things.
So I'll have to send you an article from the Epic Times as well that of the money we. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up again about what.
Send me this stuff, because next week we'll talk about that. Like, I'll clip the stuff you send me into like news clippings and slideshows or video clips, and we can talk about it next week. I'll put it together.
This is the government funding organizations to how do they word it? Combat misdis and malinformation.
Yeah. Yep. That's
and who they pay it to come up with these wild. I don't know. It's crazy. You'll have to read it.
No, let's talk about it on the next episode. Also, like, what's crazy to me about all that stuff is, again, it's like, unless you're willing to go outside the mainstream to an organization like Epoch Times you're not going to hear any of this stuff. In fact, they'll be smeared as far right or Russian propaganda or whatever.
Oh, yeah. So I think they got banned in China because they used to call out the Chinese government. You know, they were trying to report the truth. And one thing I like about the Epoch Times is they actually have investigative reporters. These news organizations now, they have somebody that says something and then they all just run with it. There's nobody
like that guy we showed earlier on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, there's nobody that goes out and actually interviews people. You know, that's how you would get the full story. It's like, hey, this person was there. They seen the whole thing. Let's interview them and see what really happened. Instead, it's like, oh, well, somebody said such and such, and then it just goes like wildfire. It's like, then you find out later on that it had nothing to do with what really happened.
Yeah, our press lies by omission. They like to leave out important details until it's too late, you know?
Yeah. And then maybe a week later, you know, after the damage has been done of the false information actually being out there, they'll throw a little retraction and they're like, oh, well, this was actually this, but moving on to the next story.
Yeah, I just saw a thing about the whole ivermectin thing where
with the FDA.
I gotta be careful, safe and effective. But basically the FDA came out now and said it's okay.
They got forced to retract it. It's not horse dewormer.
Okay, this is the last clip we're gonna play before we shut down. But this is like kind of the icing on all of this cake, and it's really good. Listen to what Tucker's question is.
Or I've never heard anybody explain as lucidly and crisply as you just did. Or I've never heard anybody explain as lucidly and crisply as you just did. But did anyone at NATO or anyone at the State Department pause for a moment and say, wait a second, we've just identified our new enemy as democracy within our own countries? I think that's what you're saying. They feared that the people, the citizens of their own countries would get their way, and they went to war against that.
Yes. Now, there's a rich history of this dating back to the Cold War. The Cold War in Europe was essentially a similar struggle for hearts and minds of people, especially in Central and Eastern Europe.
Yes.
In these sort of Soviet buffer zones, and starting in 1948, the national security state was really established. Then you had the 1947 Act, which established NATO. The Central Intelligence Agency. You had this new world order that had been created with all these international institutions.
Like in retrospect, looking at this too, man. Like you can just see the grift. You're like, oh, we made a lot of money on that war. We got to find a way to make sure the wars keep going.
Yeah, what was that one show? Lord of War. There's a couple of different ones.
Oh,
War Dogs.
Yes. So the War Dogs I haven't seen, but Lord of War is Nicolas Cage, where he's the Ukrainian arms dealer. I was thinking about that movie this morning.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that you think of these shows as just being some Hollywood made up show. It happened. It is Hollywoodized, but there's real accounts of these things that have happened that bring these stories about.
Yeah, that's totally based on a true story.
So I'm pretty sure War Dogs is the one where
Jonah Hill.
Yeah, Jonah Hill, but that basically is based on true story too, and no, not completely, but it's facts that really happened. It's like these people start finding out, hey, guess what? War is profitable. So if we can get in on it, and when they tell them, I don't want to be a spoiler here, but in the middle of the show, it's like, yeah, you come in like $10 billion under anyone else, and like about fell out of their chairs. They're like, $10 billion? We undercut everybody by $10 billion. We totally screwed ourselves type of deal, It's like, but they were just trying to get into the grift and learned the hard way that lost a lot of money,
That's how wasteful it is too. Holy shit.
Oh yeah. Well, somebody did a study on what the Stinger missiles used to cost compared to what they cost now. And it is, I could be screwing up the numbers here, but it went from like $40,000 a missile to like $400,000 a missile now.
Do you remember the Enron scandal?
Yeah, briefly.
So the guy who did that, Kenneth Lay, I think was his name. He was good friends with George W. Bush. And I mean, Reagan was bad and everything, and Clinton was bad too. But like George W. Bush's administration, I think, was the genesis of this like explosion of like military grift, where they like just took it. I mean, it was already going on, but they just took it to a whole new level with these like contracts where Cheney made tons of money on Halliburton.
Right.
And, and it's just gotten worse and worse progressively it's like Enron accounting brought to the military, basically.
Yeah. But let's throw indictments at Trump for he made money or something, while he was president. It's like, wait, according to what I understood is he actually put his companies in trusts. So there wouldn't be a conflict of interest between him and his companies.
Yeah.
But like I say, if you're supposedly in the media and you're throwing mud and also, you don't reach. Go ahead.
It's such a double standard because they all do that. They all do it.
Yeah. But like I say, nobody's been a threat to their game as bad as Trump. Because not all the way. I mean, like I say, everybody wants to say, oh, he donated to the Democrat Party. He's a Democrat, when he first ran in 2016. It's like, no, he was playing the game that you have to play in New York City. You got to donate to both sides to get different things to happen for your businesses. It's just
but that also goes back to the point I was making earlier about how I used to consider myself a Democrat, and that party has changed completely. Like it's not they're not left. The Democrats are not left. Like they do dress up their. If you look at the policies they passed, Joe Biden has a long history of just doing right-wing shit and like authoritarian shit and passing like police bills. And, he's from Delaware. He's literally a servant of the credit card industry that has all their, tax havens there and stuff. So it's like, anyway.
Yep. Just got to follow the money.
Exactly.
And you had the 1948 UN Declaration on Human Rights, which forbid the territorial acquisition by military force. So you can no longer run a traditional military occupation government in the way that we could in 1898, for example, when we took the Philippines.
That's why we use proxies like Ukraine.
Everything had to be done.
We don't have to be directly involved.
Right.
But
we can still dump billions and billions of dollars into a war that way.
Yep.
Legitimization process whereby there's some ratification from the hearts and minds of people within the country. Now, often that involves simply puppet politicians who are groomed as emerging leaders by our State Department.
Zelensky.
But the battle for hearts and minds had been something that we had been giving ourselves a long moral license leash, if you will. Since 1948, one of the godfathers of the CIA, George Kennan, at 12 days after we rigged the Italian election in 1948, by stuffing ballot boxes and working with the mob, we published a memo called The Inauguration of Organized Political Warfare, where he said, listen, it's a mean old world out there. We at the CIA just rigged the Italian election. We had to do it because if the communists won, maybe there'd never be another election in Italy again. So, but it's really effective, guys. We need a Department of Dirty Tricks to be able to do this around the world. And it's essentially a new social contract we're constructing with the American people, because this is not the way we've conducted diplomacy before. But we are now forbidden from using the War Department. In 1948, they also renamed the War Department to the Defense Department. So again, as part of
that's crazy.
It's just like our current bills now. You just put a certain name on it that makes it sound better than the last thing, or what's really in it.
Orwellian language. It's the defense. We got to defend ourselves, guys. Come on.
It's not the War Department. It's the Defense Department. Sounds way better.
This diplomatic onslaught for political control rather than it looking like it's overt military control. But essentially what ended up happening there is we created this foreign domestic firewall, we said, that we have a Department of Dirty Tricks to be able to rig elections, to be able to control media, to be able to meddle in the internal affairs of every other plot of dirt in the country, but this sort of sacred dirt on which the American homeland sits they are not allowed to operate there. The State Department, the Defense Department, and the CIA are all expressly forbidden from operating on U.S. soil. Of course, this is so far from the case, it's not even funny, but that's because of a number of laundering tricks that they've developed over 70 years of doing this. But essentially, there was no moral quandary at first with respect to the creation of the censorship industry when it started out in Germany and in Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia and in Sweden and Finland. There began to be a more diplomatic debate about it after Brexit, and then it became full throttle when Trump was elected. And what little resistance there was washed over by the rise and saturation of Russiagate, which basically allowed them to not have to deal with the moral ambiguities of censoring your own people. Because if Trump was a Russian asset, you no longer really had a traditional free speech issue. It was a national security issue. It was only after Russiagate died in July 2019 when Robert Mueller basically choked on the stand for 3 hours and revealed he had absolutely nothing after 2.5 years of investigation, that the foreign to domestic switcheroo took place, where they took all of this censorship architecture spanning DHS, the FBI, the CIA, the DOD, the DOJ, and then the thousands of government-funded NGO and private sector mercenary firms were all basically transited from a foreign predicate, a Russian disinformation predicate, to a democracy predicate by saying that disinformation is not just a threat when it comes from the Russians, it's actually intrinsic. And so by that, they were able to launder the entire democracy promotion regime change toolkit just in time for the 2020 election.
There you go.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? But
the regime change toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and love him or hate him, Glenn Beck has actually been really good on calling this stuff out.
He's been great.
And, you know, it's like, and he's another one of those people that gets called out as a right-wing conspiracy theorist, but it's like, dude, he's got receipts. You can go to the Blaze and look at them and read them.
Under Obama. And looking back, I'm just like, man, the conservatives were onto something under Obama, but it was so easy to dismiss it as racism because it was the first black president.
Right.
And he was like, and I bought into some of this too, because like, well, George Bush was doing a lot of this stuff and you guys didn't care. But now that but that's how it works too. Like I told someone the other day, you know, I like Fox News when there's a Democrat president because they're much more critical of power. And the same is true of the other side. When there's a Republican president, they're much more like going at them.
Both on their sides from either way. Yeah. So it's like,
but not when it's disingenuous, not when there's no real, like with Trump, like once you go into the weeds on any of this shit, there's nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where we go from here. You know, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. It just seems like it's ramping up worse.
No, I hear you. It's definitely a tiger by the tail.
It's my Alex Jones. Let's see what Keith Olbermann has to say. You want to hear what Keith Olbermann has to say? I have some really good Keith Olbermann stuff here. Where is it?
That guy's a nut job.
I heart feces.
Oh, is the Biden one not in here? I have one where, oh no, that's not it. Damn it.
I heart porn star dick.
I thought it was nasty.
Anyway,
well, it just gives you a whole keyboard of sound bites.
No, I made a lot of these are sound clips that I have. Like I have this one, so like when we go into a dream, like remember the time. Here's one you'll love, man. This is like one of my all-time favorites.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me. I didn't do anything. Ow! 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 Ow!
Do you remember that?
I think I remember that one.
It was John Kerry. This kid stands up and he's like, I heard your skull and bones. And then they like literally drag the kid out and start tasing him. And he throws a fit, like the him throwing a fit part is what I think. He's like, oh, oh, dude,
that's really hilarious.
Anyway, man, we'll close out now. We've been on for 2 hours, but thanks for doing this. And let's like send me all the stuff you want to talk about, like the stuff you already sent me. I will pull slides of it and video clips or whatever for next week, so we can load them up. You can load them up too. And next week, I won't do the download thing because it made. Like there's a couple times you got a little shaky, and I'm sure it's because it's like trying to like save your footage, so it creates
and I can see on my side I've probably got to go through and clean out my device. I'm sure with all my recordings piling up now, I'm eating up all the memory in my computer, so I just need to go through and clean it up.
Yeah, StreamYard's good for that too. They store I mean, if you're broadcasting to YouTube or Rumble too, like once we're finished with the stream, I can always download it and edit it into clips. But anyway, I think let's keep doing this because it was a good conversation, and bring some clips to the table next week, and then that way it's also easy. Like I struggle when I'm putting my show together because I'm trying to like do stuff that the other like podcasters I watch aren't doing, and so it takes me some time sometimes. But this, it's like let's just grab some stuff, and then I don't want it to be difficult because I like you work a real job.
Yeah.
Like I work on a computer most of the time. So
yeah, for me, I'll admit it. I'm computer illiterate for the most part.
I mean, you're better than a lot of people, but I also know that you have a family and like an actual, like, I mean, my kids are grown. Like I have a lot more free time than you do. So
right. No, I'll try and make this work for sure. And like I say, there's a certain amount of people that realize, look, if we don't start coming together, this thing's not going to work out well for any of us.
And we have common interests. That's the other thing. Like, that's what I loved about the Jimmy Dore clip that we opened with is, you know, obviously he's patting himself on the back, and he should, because he's bringing people together that would not otherwise get together.
Right.
And I mean, Jimmy has definitely changed my perspective on a ton of stuff. Like, he's been right consistently too. That's the other thing. Like, he was one of the first people going like, AOC's a fake. AOC's a fake. She's just another Democrat. She's not going to help you, progressive. She's not going to get you healthcare. She's not. And everyone was like, fuck you, Jimmy. You're a sexist. You're a misogynist. You're a racist. And it's like, now all those same people are like, holy shit, he was right.
Well, and what has happened in like even like New York, you know, for the people there to endure her policies, I'll just put it that policies, and then she's still in power, you know. It's like what's going on?
It's the thing with that though is she, as bad as she is, and I call her out as a fake because I have clips of her going like, we need to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party. That's why she was elected. She was elected to be a challenge to the left of Nancy Pelosi. And now she is Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, but they all vote
fake as all of them. Yeah. And that's the thing. But by the same token, she's still better than the last guy they had. I
don't even remember who that was.
Joe Crowley. His name was Joe Crowley.
He must just stay quiet.
Yeah, and that's what I love about insurgent candidates like Matt Gaetz or like Josh Hawley in Missouri, for example. I don't agree with a lot of what Josh Hawley says, but the fact that he took out Claire McCaskill is like,
well, and that's the thing. I mean, you got to have some challenge somewhere. Or like say it just you turn into the same old and that's what I think the real Americans here in America, we want to feel like somebody's standing up for us. It's like, so why are we electing people that once they go to Congress, they never come back here? They just live in DC essentially, and you get out of touch with the people that voted you in there. And I think we see a lot of that, and that's why Congress has such a low approval rating.
We've talked about this before. We need term limits.
You know what? How do you do that though without throwing them all out and saying, okay, this is the new Congress. Yeah. This is what we the people are doing, without really going extreme. They're not going to vote themselves out of a job. That's what
I think there's a better chance now than ever to do what me and you talked about years ago, which was like, we need to just tell everyone left or right in every district, vote out the incumbent, no matter what it is. Even if you're going to vote for a Democrat, just vote for a new one.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the only way our message from our side is really going to happen. And I don't personally see that happening because we're humans.
I mean, right now it's the people on the far right that I see actually doing the most to like right things, you know, like Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus. Thomas Massey's another congressman I love.
Yeah, I like him too.
Yeah, because he's in there going like, yo, we need to change this. Matt Gaetz, basically all he did, they were able to like get concessions out of that speaker thing. They're getting around it now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he was trying to make single item bills. So he's like, what they do is they throw all this shit into an omnibus bill, and then you can't vote against it. And that's how it's rigged against us. He's like, I want one item bills.
Well, and so that's what irritates the crap out of me about everybody that's jumping on board with that whole, the Republicans, they don't want border security. Look, we put up a border security bill, but they all voted no on it. And it's like they voted no because you have so much crap in that same bill.
Exactly.
Yeah, give them a clean border bill.
how can we sneak through Ukraine funding?
Exactly.
Oh, we'll tie it to a border thing. Of course.
Yeah. And then blame the Republicans for what's happening at the border because they didn't vote for it.
that doesn't work anymore as much as it used to, but that's why they're trying to tamp down the internet, like Mike Benz was just saying, because the control mechanism is not there anymore. People are actually taught. Steve Bannon is another guy who was labeled a white supremacist, who I love, he said it better than anyone. He's like, these people want information. He's like, I give my audience homework assignments and they come back like have read shit that I told them to read and stuff. And he's like, people are hungry for information, right or left, like no matter what. And if you give it to them, they'll come back. Like the reason Jimmy Dore has such a huge audience is because he goes into the weeds on this stuff better than any, like his last stream was like so good. He had a whole thing about this black guy who was on The View talking about how focusing on race is not what Martin Luther King wanted. And this guy obliterates these women. The one lady tries to call him a charlatan, and it's it's hilarious. He destroyed them by just being smart and intelligent, and
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where I think on the most part of conservatives and stuff, they know what they believe, but they have a hard time articulating it in a way that makes sense. It's like in bits and pieces instead of like a coherent thought process to say, this is what I believe and why I believe and why it doesn't jive with what you're saying. And I don't think they come across very well. And I mean, I think that about some of the stuff that I say sometimes, like, did that come across the way I was thinking it in my head?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, the good thing about
but it's easier. Yeah, it's easier. Like me and you talking about it, we can keep the conversation going, and hopefully it makes sense to everybody out there watching.
But like on my show, I don't have a ton of subscribers, but I'll have people jump in the comments and say stuff and chime in, and I love it. It's like, oh, this guy brought up this point. Like I was talking about this Mike Benz thing and the NATO stuff, and he's like, the U.S. He's like, for better or for worse, the Marshall Plan. And he's right. Like after World War II, the Marshall Plan is the thing, and that's NATO, and that's like that's that chart I was showing earlier with all the.
Yeah, it's wild, but
we're gonna make things better. So Newsbustin with Dustin, Justin.
Yeah,
we'll bring this episode to a close and tell your family that I love them, man. And
we'll do.
Talk soon.
All right, till the next time, everybody. We're tuning out.
Yeah, we're out of here. Send me links and stuff.
Yeah,
if the ones you already sent, I'll cut for next week. So
okay, gotcha.
Next Sunday, we'll see you next Sunday.
Newsbustin, baby.
All right, take care of yourselves, y'all.
See ya.